So I'm Joe Maissel. I'm with League of Women Voters, Port Washington, Manhasset. And if you are here to learn more about ranked choice voting and concurrence at the state level, then you are in the right place. Oh, good. And I see someone else is joining. Very good. All right, so let's jump right in. Let's talk about what the agenda is tonight. We're gonna be very specific about a particular ask, what we're asking of your league to take action on by March 1st. We're then going to talk more generally about why, what benefits does ranked choice voting offer? I'm going to, for those, I'm just going to take the time. Some of you I know are real experts in ranked choice voting, but I'm going to take the time to actually just go through and explain ranked choice voting, because I'm certain that not everyone is an expert. So I'm going to just go through it. I'm also going to talk about the league's history with ranked choice voting. That's important because ranked choice voting is not new to the League of Women Voters at many state levels and at the national level as well. We'll also talk about why New York State is a special case. That's probably a bit of an exaggeration. I would say that it's really more an answer to why is New York State different when it comes to ranked choice voting than Alaska or Nevada or Maine, where they were able to make it a state law and a state voting method. New York is a bit different, and we'll talk about that. And then we're going to talk about what we need to do to get ranked choice voting for New York State. All right, so kind of just to get a sense of what we're driving towards this, we have some real focus. We've been working on this for a while, and thanks, Laura. I'm so nice to see you. And 2 years ago, Laura Quigg actually invited our league to co-present at the convention in 2021. Obviously, it was held virtually, but we've been working on this for a while, and League New York City has been working on this for well over a decade. So this is a long time piece of work that we've been driving towards. And so what we are trying to do is get a statewide concurrence with New York City's position on ranked choice voting, which is supportive of ranked choice voting. And what we will benefit from, the way we do this is to make it a program item or a recommended program item. And what we need are local leagues to essentially input their support for this as a program item on their survey, program planning survey that was sent out in early December, that's due on March 1st. So your league needs to respond to question 4 on that survey. At the end, we're happy to answer any questions if your league doesn't have the survey or is unfamiliar with it. That's the drive here. We're kind of starting with the end, really. So on your program recommendations form, there are questions for recommendations of 1 through 4. The 4th question in there asks, does your league wish to propose a new program for study or concurrence? And we have some suggested language here. Now, I know some of you have seen, I think I sent out, we did send out a prior version. Regina sent it out to all local leagues with some slightly different language. It actually had the New York City position and some other language. I think this language would suffice as well. And in fact, I'm certain it would. And we can distribute this as well. Simply, we propose adopting a New York State position on RCV by concurrence with League of Women Voters of New York City's position. We'll talk about this, adjusted to be statewide, because the New York City position expresses support for local elections explicitly. So it will be adjusted, and that's, I think, a very succinct way to explain the ask. We'll discuss it in detail at the end. All right, great. So that's sort of the concrete ask and what we're driving towards. So why are we doing this? Why would we seek a state level position? Why on ranked choice voting? Well, let's talk about some of the excellent work that's been done at the League of Women Voters US level. In 2020, in Impact on Issues, page 46, 47, remember, you can find the position on alternatives to plurality voting, which includes ranked choice voting. And the US position really lays out great reasons why we can improve the way we vote, how we vote. Ranked choice voting encourages voter turnout and participation, encourages underrepresented voters. Now, by allowing people to vote sincerely, this third bullet point, it really maximizes effective votes. A person can vote without feeling like their vote is being wasted. Also, an important point, it's verifiable and auditable. So a ranked choice election, you can go to the paper and count the votes manually. And it is compatible with the normal way that we vote. And so these principles here, of course, now they are League US level principles, right? But they're, I think, incredibly consistent with League of Women Voters' mission overall. Very, very consistent, strengthening in terms of strengthening democracy. So let's talk about the benefits briefly. We eliminate runoffs. That's huge. In fact, the way you tabulate ranked choice voting is often called, or is called, instant runoff. This was certainly one of the big benefits that New York City was seeking, and was realized, because in New York City, if you don't reach the 50% threshold, then in order to understand who enjoys majority support, you go to a runoff. We've seen how challenging this can be in places. Georgia is probably the best example, where their laws require majority support for their senator, and so they went to runoffs twice, and we saw just how expensive, how nasty those campaigns can be. Now, because ranked choice voting, as we get into it, you'll see, encourages positive campaigning, reduces negative campaigning, because you need to potentially be a voter's second choice, not just their first choice. You also benefit from cooperating with other candidates if you're running. And so we saw this in New York City, frankly. I was really tracking the television ads very carefully. It was quite incredible to see there were no attack ads during that campaign. It was extraordinary, a big shift. Now, that doesn't mean on Twitter there weren't spats, or during debates there weren't nasty things said. It's politics, but it really did take the temperature down. We also find that and this is well established, that voters are more satisfied with the results because it leads to consensus candidates. We also see that more women and minorities are elected in ranked choice elections, and we've seen that historically where it's been implemented. We saw that in New York City this time around as well. All right, so I know this is going to be review for a lot of people, but some people on this meeting and those watching the recording may not know exactly what we're talking about with ranked choice voting. So I'm going to give a high-level overview and give some examples, concrete examples, real-world examples of what it helps and how it works. So all of us are familiar with voting, where you go in and you make your choice. You choose one candidate, especially in a single-member election. But with ranked choice voting, if there are at least 5 people running, and if there are more, still you would rank up to just 5 in most elections. Some cases 4, some cases 3, some cases 6. But typically, again, we see 5 being a popular number for ranking, and you rank them in order of preference. Who do you like first? Who do you like second? In this case, candidate B was ranked first, candidate C ranked second, etc. Now, just a little sidebar here to just make the case that ranked choice voting, and this slide's just a little bit dated. There have been some nice updates recently, but ranked choice voting is used all over the country, and it's now well over 20 cities. And states, Maine and Alaska, vote at the state level with ranked choice voting. Now Nevada's been added to that as well. Obviously, New York City. But another key point about this is that ranked choice voting has been a widely adopted form of voting globally as well. So this is the point here, is that this is nothing new. In Australia, they like to say, they talk about Foster's as Australian for beer. They talk about ranked choice voting is Australian for Australian for voting. They've been using it over 100 years. They marvel at the simplicity and crudity of our method of voting. Meaning they think it's silly. It's not going anywhere in Australia. It's well loved. Ireland, the same thing. And it is used around the world in many other countries. And so this is just a high-level survey, but this is by far from a complete map of where it's used abroad. So again, the point here, it's far from new, and it's beloved in many of the countries that it's used. Let's talk about why. what does it eliminate? Well, one of the key benefits, and we went through some of them, but when it nuts and bolts, most important thing, if you will, that it eliminates the spoiler effect. I'm going to give some concrete examples of that, of why this is so critical. What is a spoiler? So under our current system, which we call plurality voting or first past the post, essentially whomever gets the most votes wins. So if 4 candidates are running, very often a candidate doesn't get to 50%. That's why you have runoffs, I understand. But in many primaries, we see candidates win with 20, 30, 40% of the vote without majority support. And so in this case here, we see in an election where strawberry, Rocky Road, vanilla, and chocolate ice cream are on the ballot, we can see that even though Rocky Road may be the consensus choice, and we'll explain how this works, because of the way plurality voting works, strawberry would win this election. The spoiler here is that the Rocky Road vote, which we see in a ranked choice election as a consensus candidate, vanilla and chocolate split the Rocky Road vote, because people who like Rocky Road, well, they might be really passionate about vanilla, they might be really passionate about chocolate, and so in a race with a lot of people running, vote gets split, and then another candidate emerges that doesn't enjoy majority support but does get the most votes. In a ranked choice system, what would happen is the people who voted for Rocky Road would very likely rank vanilla or chocolate second, and when vanilla or chocolate is eliminated during the counting process, their vote will go into the column of Rocky Road, and Rocky Road would emerge as the clear consensus flavor, right, for everyone, and more people would be satisfied with the outcome. Let's give some concrete examples. I saw this 1992 and I thought, yeah, I voted in this election, plenty old enough to have voted here. I remember this very, very well. So Clinton won this election without actually significantly short of majority support. Of course, we don't know what would have happened under a ranked choice system, but what is clear is that Ross Perot played spoiler, or very likely played spoiler for Bush. Perot voters, from what I understand, leaned conservative, or necessarily all conservative, but leaned conservative. And so we didn't get a clear picture of the majority winner, and Perot, we know, siphoned off votes. And so I've even heard it said that under a ranked choice system, perhaps Perot might have even won. We don't know, we'll never know. But this is an example of obviously an important election where the winner did not enjoy majority support. And here's another really important example. When in Bush versus Gore in 2000, the famous hanging Chad election, there was a tiny difference, but neither candidate had majority support, and Ralph Nader played the role of spoiler in this election. And what we see is that in this case, we saw that there was actually a very strong preference among Nader voters for Gore. So had it been a ranked choice election, and Nader voters had the opportunity to put in a second choice, it's very clear that Al Gore would have achieved majority support in that election. We would have had a very different outcome. And so that is the essence of one of the critical features of ranked choice voting that we think will help again bring consensus candidates, reduce and eliminate the spoiler effect. Let's talk about across New York State where we've had spoilers. It goes on. It happens a lot. I think these examples, I'm not sure if these are primary, like these look like general no, some of them are general elections. These are almost all general. But in each case, we actually don't know which candidate would have won. I would say in 1980, I remember my parents voting for John Anderson. And I think that John Anderson was a moderate liberal, probably siphoned off a lot of support from Carter. We don't know. But again, these are cases where people won important offices without enjoying clear majority support. Under a ranked choice system, of course, this would never have happened. Here's another, again, we're coming up to relatively recent history. This is a constant theme in our elections. The other thing that happens this happens at the primary level all the time. One of when I was growing up in Hudson Valley, we had a local senator, a moderate Republican, Steve Saland. Steve Saland in the state legislature, it's around the I think 2010 to 2014, as a Republican, voted for marriage equality in New York State. In the next election, Steve Saland was primaried, meaning challenged by a more conservative Republican in a primary in a low turnout race, and was knocked out of office. Again, under a ranked choice system, very unlikely that would have happened. All right. So what the point here is that our plurality system is the spoiler. That's what's spoiling our elections. Plurality splits coalitions. It does not eliminate the spoiler effect. And we all know this feeling going to the voting booth. You can't necessarily vote your conscience because you're concerned that your vote will be thrown away. If there's a candidate that represents a view that you're sure is not going to win and potentially can spoil the race, you're not going to vote for them. We also, as we saw, we don't get majority winners, so we don't know who the actual consensus candidate is. It also, frankly, discourages candidates from running because very simply, they don't want to be spoilers, right? So actually for very good reasons under plurality systems. And of course, it's limiting our choice in the voting booth. That's just simply, you can't vote sincerely if you don't have multiple choices and you're afraid that your vote is going to be wasted. So that's it for the kind of explanation of ranked choice voting. For those who are very familiar with it, thank you for sitting through that. I just wanted to say that as we mentioned earlier with the US position, the league has a strong history with ranked choice voting. 14 state leagues have positions that favor ranked choice voting. The league New York City was adopted in 2009, I believe, and of course was instrumental in bringing ranked choice voting to New York City's primaries. Now, it was a decade-long process, but obviously it paid off, and I know the league was instrumental in making it happen. And as we mentioned, at the national level, League of Women Voters US has a position that favors alternatives to plurality, like ranked choice voting. So now, let's talk about New York State. So in states that have been able to adopt ranked choice voting, all those states that come to mind immediately, Maine, Alaska, Nevada, all of those states allow for ballot referendums for changes to things like voting laws, et cetera, to nearly all laws. New York State does not have a ballot referendum process that functions outside the legislature. The New York State legislature, I believe that the ERA is going to go through a ballot referendum, but it had to go through the legislature. It has to be originated or created in legislature to get on the ballot. There's no way to work outside of that. So that means for ranked choice voting to become law in New York State, an acceptable voting method, to be an acceptable voting method, it has to go through the legislature. And now for the League of Women Voters, New York State, to advocate to our legislators, we have to have a state level position. That's just the way the league works. So we cannot now, even if our local leagues have a position, we can't advocate at the state level, because that's how the league functions. And it's great. It has to be something that the league agrees on statewide. It makes sense. The other thing that's different about New York State, not all states function this way, is that the two parties control the administration of elections. So what does that mean? It means that having ranked choice voting across the board, including general elections, while highly desirable, is, on the face of it, threatening to the two parties, because it makes it easy for third parties to run without worrying about the spoiler effect, right? So you'll basically be encouraging third parties, to run. And so I believe this is, again, this is open to debate, but we should be open in the way that New York City was open to limiting our ranked choice voting's use to primaries. We see that in a lot of states where the parties are in control, and it will still be an enormous improvement through the primary process in order to get consensus candidates before they get to the general, which, if we get down to just two anyway, we won't have spoilers. So I just want to make that clear that because of the way New York State runs, we should be open to the fact that it will likely be restricted to primaries, although that's not a foregone conclusion, and we aspire to have it used in all elections. So what can we do about this? Well, that's what we're here for. And what we can do is make concurrence with the League of Women Voters New York City position a program recommendation for the convention, full stop. Now, it's important to mention what the ask is to make it a program recommendation. The ask is not for a yes or no vote right now. So that's why we did this little education session. You may not think, or your local league may not think it's a good idea, may not think it's time, and may at the end vote against it. So this is again asking to simply get it on as a concurrence item, rather again not asking for a commitment to one opinion about it or another. So now the steps are to ask your league president to answer the program survey by including the language that we mentioned. And if you already support ranked choice voting, you can have your local league hold education sessions, and I'm going to be doing one out on Long Island later on. I've got one coming up on Monday with a local league, and we can provide education to your league. You should encourage other leagues to take advantage of that, and so we can help. So what's this all about? It's about making our democracy work better, and that's why we're here. So thank you. That is the presentation portion. Now we'd like to open it up to comments or questions, and I'm actually just going to go back and keep on the screen for a minute. If anyone who wants to screenshot, we can distribute this slide as well. But if anybody wants to screenshot or write down what this says for question 4, by all means. Jennifer, I think I just saw your hand go up.
No, I was applauding.
Oh, there's applauding. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Much appreciated. So I don't know. I'm not monitoring the chat. I see that there's some activity there. I don't know if there are questions. People saying, okay, great. You could certainly, yep, there we go. So any points of discussion, concerns?
Joe, why don't we take the screen down?
Okay, great.
And if they want it, we can put it back up. Wait.
Yeah,
What do you need, Sarah?
I just need the wording for the,
I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you.
oh, thank you very much. I'm
Thank you.
sorry.
Not at all. No, please. Thank you. That's fantastic. That's what we're here for. I really appreciate that. If anybody else would like it, please, and didn't grab it there, please go ahead and say it. So I think we got 2 participants raising hands. I see Nancy, but I need to get Hollywood Squares back. So I can see everyone. There we go. Nancy, I see you happen to be at the top left of my screen, and Lisa's right next to you with hands up. So Nancy, please go ahead.
Right, well, the only complaint or objection I've heard to it is that it's very complicated. And this person was suggesting that New York City maybe didn't count correctly, that maybe there were problems with that because it was complicated. What's the answer to that?
Yeah, I think you have to acknowledge some of the challenges that we've seen. The Wall Street Journal makes this point all the time. It's hard, it's confusing, and I think the truth is a small number of people, I mean, in probably less than 10%, do genuinely find the change jarring. I think we have to acknowledge that that's the reality. But a vast majority, when surveyed, strongly favor ranked choice voting, really like the experience, understand what it's doing and why. And how do you to say it? Is it more complex? I suppose. Once you are used to it, is it very straightforward? I think so. But I would never deny that point of view. And as I said, some very smart people have that point of view. To say that the votes weren't counted correctly, this is where I think I would take issue, and I would say that the results are absolutely auditable, and you can with very simple arithmetic
Yeah.
work through the data, like the
Yeah.
election data is all available.
Mhm.
And so anyway, so that's it. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you. Great question. Important question, and a valid reason why people object, and one of the most common. Lisa, I see your hands up.
Yes, hi, thank you so much. I spent most of your talking your presentation trying to figure out how to work my Bluetooth. So,
Looks like you got it.
so the Bluetooth is not working, so I'm not sure what
Oh,
happened.
Okay.
But yeah, we are very interested in doing that at the town level.
Yeah.
So Jennifer, as a matter of fact, Jennifer Green and I have been speaking at our town board meetings.
Mm.
And we're trying to give information and speak in terms that everyone understands, because we have to make it very simple for people to grab. I like the first screen that you put up, where it kind of breaks down the benefits and the and how it works, because I would like to even make a flyer of that to hand to people, because it has to be something that people understand in very layman's terms. We have 6 councilmatic districts in one town, and we're trying to convince the councilman to split it instead of 6 different where they're gerrymandered. That's the problem that we have, because there's a lot of gerrymandered, and Black and brown voices are being suppressed, and of course it favors one party. But what we're trying to do is make it more appeasing to both parties, why it would be simpler to break it just into 2 different districts with 3 representatives in each district. So I don't know if you can send us that screenshot of the first screen that you put up with the benefits, and I forgot what the other side was, because I was trying to read it through and listen to you.
If everybody puts their email in the chat, Joe can send this to you by email, and then you can have the entire page or the entire thing.
Thank you. And Lisa, I do one better too. I also would be happy to come and present, or, you know, we have, by the way, a lot of presenters. Laura's on, is a talented presenter and educator on ranked choice voting. I'm sure at this point, Margaret, and I know Amanda, her partner in crime up in League Syracuse, are now ready to help you. So I think there are a lot of resources for you to actually get a more, I didn't go into great detail. We could really walk through it. We could also talk about in a different forum where we're really focused on the nuts and bolts of this. We could talk about multi-member races and what that looks like, and proportional representation, which is what you're talking about.
Yes.
And we can talk about how the 2 Portlands, Portland, Maine and Portland, Oregon, are trying out proportional representation in their local elections. And, you know, that's something that you can follow, bring to your town board, et cetera, and really work for, because I think that's fabulous. That proportional representation piece, frankly, is what is the long game that, you know, the national organizations like Fair Vote are playing. That's what it's all about in many ways. So, I mean, so it's about a lot of things, but that is the big one, is ending the gerrymandering, the unfairness, poor representation in these kind of multi-member races. So anyway, would be willing to invest whatever time is needed to help educate. And you're on Long Island. I could, if you're meeting in person, would be glad to come out and work with you.
Yeah, that would be great, because I think Jennifer and I, we especially because we went through the whole census and the redistricting, that we fought for like 3 months straight trying to make sure that we have proper representation. And of course, the gerrymandering, we did not have proper representation, and that's for the next 10 years. So I think it would be, and I want to be able, and she and I talked about it, to make it a convincing argument as to why it would be beneficial for both parties to have a ranked choice voting, so that way it would be proper representation of our, and the town, at the town level, this isn't even the county level, at the town level, so it could be like, you know, the template that we can actually move the town into something like that, which would be much better.
I'm all in to help with that. I mean, that's fabulous. So yeah, but let's get this. What we want to do is get through this phase with League of Women Voters and get it to the state level. It will make talking to your assembly member and senator far easier, right? So let's but yes, all in on that. I see Julie's hand. I also see Laura's, but Julie, I know has Julie's had her hand up for a while. So Julie, you're up.
Right. This is really a logistical question. Maybe Laura or maybe you, Joe, could even answer this. It's when there is a ranked choice voting system in place and you're at the polls, are the instructions image-like or are they written? Because I think that, we all know from our kids or from us that we read differently from each other. We understand differently from each other. Some people are visual learners and readers. Some people are much better with numbers. Some people are better with words. So I'm just wondering how the instructions are given and how the marketing is done, because that would impact people's understanding.
I think it's a perfect question for Laura, because unlike me, I have never voted in a ranked choice election and would really like to. Laura has and has worked on it for many years. So Laura, if you have an answer to that, that would be great. I think you're on mute.
Yes, hi. So I'm from New York City and Voter Services Committee. We worked on both the educational process as well as and the advocacy before that time. And I also, voted as an individual. When I also had the concerns that you had about what the ballot would look like. So when we first had our first special election, and I got a ballot that that showed just a special election that was not a primary based because there were no parties at that stage. I was very pleased at how it was laid out, and it was primarily visual with the candidates across the top, and I can share this with you, but also it was really intuitive the way that it was laid out, and we didn't hear any negative feedback about the difficulty of what the ballot looked like and having to navigate that. The other thing that, well, in terms of our education, what we were grappling with was like, do we keep it super simple and just say, this is a ranking the same way that you rank high schools in New York City? What does ranking mean? Was that difficult? And as it turns out, that was like really easy. And then there are some people who wanted to have a deeper dive. So we did have a whole lot of presentations where we talked about how the actual counting took place. And there were, I'm a nerd, so for me, that was like everything that I wanted, but there were not that many people who were interested in it. So, we had our first round of it in New York City with the mayoral election and city council. I'm losing track last year. But now this year we have a city council elections where we're gonna have, it was 2 years ago. So we'll have to do it all over again. And at this point we'll be just talking with people who are voting for city council elections. So that's kind of an uphill battle. Also for me personally, doing the mayoral election, I really, really liked not having to worry about the spoiler effect. So I could just vote my preferences. Let's say that there were certain candidates I really didn't like, but I was afraid of having, a vote for one or two of the other opponents, mess up my opportunity to express my displeasure at the one that I didn't like, keeping this like as neutral as possible in the language. So, and in terms of the the miscounting issue, that was a human error. that came in. And Joe, you might remember more about this. My memory is failing me a little bit on that regard. But anyway, that's sort of touching on a few different points.
If I remember correctly, New York City released early data, which actually doesn't make any sense. And at one point in releasing the early data, they included practice set where they tested the material. And then they took the practice set out and everybody wondered where those votes had gone.
That's exactly right.
Thank you. Yes.
Just poor election administration, nothing to do with ranked choice voting. So, all right. So, Jennifer, I see that you've got your hand up.
Yes, I wanted to find out, for those who are familiar with the success in New York City and elsewhere, I read about events that were called like beer ranking parties or donut ranking parties or gatherings where, you'd have house parties and people would fill out mock ranked choice voting ballots based on their favorite desserts or whatever. And so I was wondering if that, I guess, I don't know if that was helpful in New York City. I read that it was helpful in Maine, and that one of the reasons that Massachusetts was that they said that it didn't work in Massachusetts was because the pandemic prevented some of these in-person gatherings from taking place where people could experience this. So is that something that I should look forward to trying to do here on Long Island? Or I'd love for somebody who's familiar with it to comment. Thanks.
Anybody know? That's awesome. I'd go. I'm going. I want to go to that party.
We did have a presentation at our local league in New York City with somebody from Maine presenting on ranking ice cream, and it did provide a sense of intuition that the problem was that everybody wanted vanilla. So there was like no second round, but if you have a sense of community and you can actually have a party, I'd say that would be a really nice idea.
Oh, I'm going. Were there any? I think I saw something on my phone that there may have been some questions in the chat that I haven't seen. Was there a question that I missed? No. Okay.
Oh.
Okay. So this has been, so thank you so much for attending this. Is I guess going back to the fact that the convention is coming up, we're looking for, to have it added to the program, the concurrence at the state level. Is that ask completely clear? I just want to make sure that if there are any questions about filling it, does everybody have the program planning form? And can we be of assistance in helping making sure that question 4 is answered with the concurrence of ranked choice voting and any other program suggestions you have? But of course, this is one we're focused on here. Okay, so you don't have that form. Good. Let's make sure we get that over to you, Lisa. Thank you. That the league presidents should have that. It was distributed, and we can send you a copy of that.
So the only thing is, league should not send in 2 forms. Your president or whoever on the board does it needs to send in the form. So Joe can send it to you, but 1 form per league. Otherwise, New York State will think we're.
And Judy, it has to be from your board or from your league, not just from you.
Right, it has to be from your president or your board, somebody authorized.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. So thank you, Lisa, for bringing that up. That was one of the main points here. So yes, we'll send it over, but please confirm that what's happening at the leadership level, so that only 1 form goes in, or we'll get in trouble.
Does everybody know how to save the chat? There are 3 little dots, gray dots typically in the place where you type in a message. Sometimes they're at the top of that little box, sometimes they're at the bottom. If you click on those 3 little dots, you can save the chat. And in the save chat, you have the language which goes on the form, and you have the URL that takes you to the ranked choice voting concurrence page. Oh, and Laura can share the ballot. Great.
Love that. Thank you, Laura.
I don't see where you saved the chat. Try that one more time.
So someplace in your chat window, The very bottom part, if you open it up, there are three, there's like a little smiley face and there's three little dots.
Hmm,
Look for the three
I
little
see.
dots someplace in that area.
yeah, bottom left of the chat window.
Bottom right.
Oh, yeah.
Click on that
Mhm.
and save the chat.
Nice, pro tip. I love that.
Where does it save to?
It saves to wherever your computer saves things. It comes in as a text file, TXT, which I find impossible. So I always copy the text file, drop it into a Word document so that I can actually engage with software I understand.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So, again, this is an all-star cast here. Really nice to see everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Just last call. Any other discussion points or things that we would like to go over in this session?
I'd like to congratulate Joe on doing this in 42 minutes.
That's what it's right. It says that on the, doesn't it say we're supposed to be done by 8:15?
Right.
All right. Well, this is fantastic. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
All
you.
right. Look
Thank
forward to
you.
working with you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Good night.
Good night.